So Africa is the fastest growing continent in terms of urbanization. So shifts from 414 million people currently living in African cities to about 1.2 billion people in the next 30 years. The greatest challenge of that is that 62% of that still remains urban slums. We kind of on the one hand ask, what will they look like if it just carries on without any great interventions? But as part of our research, how do we actually use theological curricula to imagine what cities could look like if there are certain other kinds of interventions? What could they look like by 2050 for them to be good places, flourishing places for all people? If the majority of Africa's people will live in cities, issues of human dignity, of social justice, of God's image in people are all coming into play. If the city actually belongs to God, it becomes quite an important question to ask, what do we do with these resources? How do we manage them well in the interest of good creation, earthkeeping, but also looking after our neighbor? Often what we regard as good theologies don't translate into good cities. And so as we think about the city, we have to also deconstruct and critique our own theologies. So I think one of the lenses that we try to use is actually to really attend to those who are excluded from the mainstream process of the city, to assess the well-being of the city through the lenses of those who are not actually participating in the city's resources, and to use that as a starting point. That will be one lens. Another lens is to shift the classroom to precarious urban spaces, to kind of challenge the hierarchy of knowledge and to say that there's knowledge and innovation and creativity to be found in some of the harshest places in our cities. Let's develop an eye for that, but let's also allow that to teach us, and not only our textbooks that are often written in a vacuum. So those will be two of the lenses. I think a third one would be the transdisciplinary thing, to help theology not to work in silos, but to understand that we can engage with planning and architecture and geography in ways that can be beneficial to all of us. And if we want to build good cities, we actually need to work in such collaborative ways. In our understanding of flourishing, it's more a process whereby people take agency for their own futures, where there's collaborative processes, where there's a mediation of access to resources and a kind of freedom from certain kinds of repressions and deficiencies that exclude people from the city. In churches often focus kind of narrowly on spiritual well-being. We want to focus on social, spatial and spiritual well-being. So those are connected. The social conditions, the access to healthcare and education and all of that. All those as expressions of God's care and love. So even in how we educate future theologians and ministers, I think that becomes a question. How do we help them see and understand the gospel in that holistic sense? That it's about the spiritual, the social, the spatial, the physical. What if theologians and city planners collaborated in building the future cities of Africa?